Hi, everyone, and welcome to In Media, an MAB podcast. I'm Casey Jones, and this is the show where we take a deeper dive behind the personalities of the media we consume, the influence that they have, and the responsibility that they carry. With us now is Jack Ebling, veteran sportscaster, sports broadcaster, sports journalist, and mainstay to Michigan sports.
Glad to be here, first of all. And when you say veteran, that's very polite. I get old, occasionally dinosaur. Veteran is good. I'll take veteran.
And we'll stick with veteran. Jack, what still excites you about the work you do these days?
Every day is different. Nothing is scripted. Nothing is predictable, which can be maddening, but it can also be exhilarating, right? And that's one of the reasons that I wanted to do this. I have a natural curiosity. I think I may have the undergraduate credit record at Michigan State. They could not get rid of me. They tried many times. But, I just was always, there was something else I wanted to learn, something else I wanted to do. And, I got almost 300 academic credits there. So I said, what can I do? And I wound up, first I was going to be a teacher and a coach. And then there was a millage crisis, and I was over at the Student Services building on campus. My wife was over there, and she was looking at the board. They have all the part-time jobs and things on it, right? And she said, "Hey, you could do this. It's a sports writer, and you could do this." So I don't want to do that. A sports writer, what a bunch of nerds, And so she says, "Come do it for me." So when your wife says, "Do it for you," you do it or you risk sleeping in the garage, right? So I said, okay, I can do this. This is Saturday morning. Nobody's going to be there. I'm going to call this number off the hook, right? So I dial the number and guy picks up the phone. "Sports." I said, yes, Mr. Sinesco. I said, I'm Jack Ebling. I'm just calling about this part-time job. I saw at Michigan State's probably been filled. I just wanted to, when can you be here? I'm thinking like 2 weeks might be good. He says, "Can you be here in 20 minutes? I had no idea where the Lansing State Journal was, and I'd been at Michigan State for 6 years, right? So I said, I suppose. I went to 120 West Lenawee instead of 120 East Lenawee. I went down by the old YMCA. So now I'm hustling down the street, right, and he's waiting for me at the side door. He said, "What took you so long?" I'm like, "Hey, buddy, you're lucky I'm here at all." So we go upstairs and sit down, and typewriters, right? Typewriters, computers. I had no idea what that was about. And so you put the paper and you turn the carriage, right? Yellow paper. And he hands me a roster sheet from one of the coaches for football. He says, "Write 3 paragraphs about what their season's going to be." So he says, "We're a daily, not a monthly." So I type this thing and hand it to him. Of course, I think it's Pulitzer Prize.
For sure.
Right? So, no. Don't you know anything about journalism? Look, you lead with a name. You got to do this. So he gives me a journalism course. High decibels for about 5 minutes, right? "Do it again." So I did it. He said, "That's better. Do this one." So he keeps handing me these sheets, right? I'm like, what the heck's going on here? Phone rings. It's just my wife. She thinks I've been abducted. He says, "Sports." He just throws the phone to me. So, hello? No, I'm okay. I'm okay. No, it's fine. About 45 minutes. I go to hang up the phone. He says, "Hey, you're going to work here. Don't ever have your wife call again." I said, "Work here? Buddy, I don't even want to be here. What are you talking about?" Right? So
I'm doing this for her.
Yeah, exactly. You don't know how lucky you are. So he said, "Okay, well, we want you to come in next Thursday night. We're going to have all of our stringers come in." I had no idea what this was about. So I was actually doing a fundraising project for multiple sclerosis at the time. But I walk in, and we're sitting in the conference room waiting for this thing to start. So we're sitting there, and they had just had their football tab, their preseason section, right? So they're all out in the middle of the table. And I grabbed one, picked it up. I said, "I'm going to see what the real writers wrote about the 6 schools that I did." So I flip open to the Ingham County League. I look and said, God, that looks an awful lot. That's what I wrote. And what he had done was have different people come in for tryouts and take all their material and put it in and never pay anybody. Right? So he got free work out of this. And then he comes in and he says, here's what we're going to do. You know, I was absolutely miserable. I hated taking scores from swimming coaches and things. So Lynn Henning knew how miserable I was because I wanted to be back coaching. And he would go into the library. I couldn't see behind. And he would call in and he would be like some fake coach, right? And he would give me like swimming scores or cross-country scores. And, you know, really make it hard, like miss the names and go back. Wait a minute, I got that wrong. And so then he would end it with like the Olympic swimming team. I chased him out onto Lenawee Street one time. But, you know, that's the way these things go. And then 25 years later, I walked out. I said, one more trip to West Lafayette's going to kill me. And had a chance to do radio for the first time. We actually overlapped a little bit with that. And the editor at the time and the publisher, when I told them I was leaving, they said, you know, I can't believe you're doing this. Before that, when I told them I had a radio show, they said, you'll never be able to do it. You stay up too late. You burn the candle at both ends. You're never going to be able to do it. Like I've already started doing it, right? What am I going to do? I said, just give me 1 year, and if my work changes in any way, I'll stop, because I had a 1-year contract. And he said, okay, but you're going to be back in this office. I said, promise, you won't have to call me in. So I walked in 10 months later, and I said, remember when you told me that I couldn't do both jobs? I said, yep. I said, well, you were right. I said, yep. So I'm leaving the paper. You what? So I'm leaving the newspaper. I'm going into broadcasting. That was 2002. Wow. Actually, it was January 2003. And here we are.
How'd that switch happen? I mean, you don't just fall in from newspaper, from the typewriter to the
Casey,
to the microphone.
I was the luckiest guy. And I mean, so many people I see coming out of J school now, so qualified. I mean, and they would do anything for a chance. Just a chance. Just open the door and they'll knock it off the hinges. But I'm writing, and I'm a columnist for the State Journal. And my friend, we used to argue late at night, big Michigan guy named Tom Crawford, said, you know, we could do a radio show together. What would you do it? I said, well, you do it, but first of all, you have somebody dumb enough to give us a radio show, right? And he calls me and he said, hey, we got these guys from Akron, Ohio, Rubber City Radio, and they want to start a sports station in Lansing, and they want to buy us breakfast. I said, why do we have to do that? He says, just come to breakfast. So go to breakfast. And the guy's pitching us on this idea of a Michigan State-centered show, right? But could you do it? And I'm thinking, you know, I've got a pretty busy full-time job. I'm traveling 2 months a year. And Tom is a vice president of a company in Jackson, Photo Marketing Associates. And I said, well, he said, what would it take? So I took a napkin and I wrote a ridiculous number on the napkin and shoved it across the table. And he looks at it, and stuck it in his pocket, and he said, we'll get back to you. So that's the end of that. You know, that was a good breakfast. And I'm in Washington, D.C., covering the first round of the 2002 NCAA tournament. Michigan State's playing North Carolina State, and they're leading at the half. But all through the first half, I'm getting messages that Crawford's trying to get a hold of me. And I had told him, hey, whatever you do not call me during a game because I'm going to ignore you and I'm going to be mad at you for doing it. And I get like 6 calls from this guy, right? So at halftime, I go out in the hallway and I said, what are you doing? And he says, we got a radio show. And I said, you got a radio show? Man, when? He says, Monday. Monday? Tom, this is Friday. Michigan State's going to be playing again Sunday night in Washington, D.C. You're going to do this alone, and you don't even know how to turn on the equipment, right? So he says, don't worry. We'll make it work. So Michigan State loses. They get guys in foul trouble, lose in the second half of this game. I change my flight, come back to Lansing, get back on Saturday. I said, hey, like, shouldn't we have a producer or some kind of a plan or a title for this show? Became the sports page with Jack and Tom. And he says, I got somebody. I got this kid. He'll be fine. I said, wait a minute. You said you got some kid who's going to do this? I mean, you got two rookies here, nothing. And you got some kid who's going to be our producer. He said, yeah, don't worry. He started doing training camp reports for the New York Giants when he was 15 up in Albany. He's going to be great. I said, I don't believe this. Turn around, and here comes Mike Valeni, who is now, highest paid radio guy in the state of Michigan. He's a national figure, and he was our first producer. And by the second hour of the first day, he was throwing food at Crawford for some of the dumb things he said. That's how it starts.
And that's so true. Like what you said, there's people who go through J school who've got all this training, and then it just takes two guys to call one kid, or it takes a part-time job posting to get into. You just need a break.
That's right. Just need a break.
Serendipitous.
Just need a break. Yeah. And I feel sorry for people who they got the resume and they've done all the internships, they've done everything, but they never get the break they need. And some people get more breaks than they can handle.
What was the biggest surprise for you when you went from the State Journal to broadcasting behind the mic? What surprised you the most?
I should have known this, but in print, you can show up 10 minutes before the game, but your work is done after the game. Broadcasting, all your work is done before the game, right? Hours and hours of preparations and lineup cards and things, everything you prepare because you have to be able to say anything. Then once the game is over, you're having a burger and a beer somewhere watching the next game. So that was a little bit different. And I had a chance to do different shows, different stations, different platforms, and sometimes how volatile that can be. The State Journal was pretty stable. It was one newspaper in the capital city, and it's still there in some form. But now, you think about stations. You get a different station manager. You get a different program director. It just takes one change, and everything can change. Yeah. We started at The Ticket, it was called, here in Lansing, FM Stations 2. And after the fourth year, they called us all in. Got a message that, hey, there's going to be a big staff meeting as soon as your show is over, 10 o'clock in the morning. Well, I was on my way to the Final Four, and I said, I don't know, I'm going to blow off this meeting, right? And so I'm driving down to Indianapolis, and I'm not quite out of Lansing yet, and I get another message that says, turn around, come back to this meeting. This is important. So I did. I walk in, and they said, congratulations. When you started at WQTX, we were the 21st station in the market. And we put into all your contracts a bonus clause if you ever got into the top 5. And they're like, top 5? You got to be kidding me. We'll put this in here. And we were number 4. So they had to pay bonuses to everyone on the staff. So congratulations, and tomorrow's your last day. So wait a minute. Now you're paying us bonuses for climbing in the ratings. Why is tomorrow our last day? We're going to automated oldies, right? New management, different philosophy. They didn't want their people, local people, out doing it. It was too labor intensive. So they switched. And I think it was 10 o'clock the next night after a game, came out of it, and they went and Elvis Presley singing. So, that was kind of it. Chris Holman?
I know the name, yeah.
The name, yeah. He was a broadcaster here in mid-Michigan for a long time. Yeah. And so suddenly I'm out of a gig, and I'm writing a Tigers book, 2006, down there every day, right, at Comerica Park. And I get a gig in Arizona, and I had another offer in New Mexico, both in the southwest part of the United States. So I called Chris, and I said, you know what, thanks for everything you've done. I'm going to try something else. It's time. You get messages for a reason, right? He says, you're not going anywhere. I said, what do you mean I'm not going anywhere? He said, you've been here since 1969. You are not going to another part of the country where you know nothing. They don't know you just because some station manager got a burr up his butt about doing something different, right? I said, well, I still do need to eat. Would be good. He said, give me 3 days. Calls me back. He says, WILS, where he was at the time on Kavanaugh, is going to be doing an afternoon show. Kind of like what Mitch Albom has done, right? He did the morning show there. He said, they're going to do a local afternoon show, and I'm going to help you get it. I said, oh, no, okay, I guess we can. It sounds interesting. So we wound up doing a show there for 4 years called Ebling and You. It was just callers, but he said, there's only one problem. I said, well, what's the problem? Sounds pretty good. He says, the owner of the station hates sports. Why would he be talking to me, right? And so I have this interview, and the guy says, yeah, well, one thing, no sports. I said, well, I don't really want to talk sports. Lie. I said, but I was a theater major. I follow politics, know more about politics than you do. I was really, risking some things when I was talking to this guy. And he said, I'll give you 90 days to prove you deserve this show. I said, 90 days? You'll be thrilled before that. And so I walk out, I go to the car, and I never finish these trips. I get in the car, and I said, we never talked about compensation. Like, what am I going to make? What's the deal here? So I go back in and knock on his door. He said, yeah. And I said, Mac, we never talked about what the salary would be or how it's going to work. I said, I'm going to give you 10 minutes an hour. I didn't even know what he meant. 10 minutes of spots to sell. He said, you sell them all, you'll be the highest paid radio guy in the market. You don't sell any of them, you'll be at the blood bank. So I'm driving home. I'm going down Saginaw, and I'm thinking, I've never sold anything, right? I mean, I sold golf balls back to players who hit them over the fence where I grew up. That was as close as it came.
But there must have been some undergrad course you took at Michigan State that helped you sell.
Yeah. So I'm driving down, and I said, I'm not really that fond of the blood bank. So I was going by Church, Critzelis, and Weibel was a law firm. Now it's just Church Weibel. And a guy who was a lead attorney there had been bugging me, like, when are you going to get back on the air? When are you going to get back on the air? Mm-hmm. He that's how he started his morning. And I said, well, I don't know. I need a sponsor. So I pulled my car again into his parking lot and went in, and I said, hey, Jim, remember when you said that you'd do anything to get me back on the air? Here's your chance. And by the time I told him what the vision was, and he called his secretary in, and he says, how much do you need? Now, I blew it. I should have said $500,000, right? I said, well, just to get started for the first month or two, I could use this. I could use, $2,500 up front would go a long way. So he told his secretary, write him a check for $6,000. That was my first sale. And then Graf Chevrolet and Dean Transportation, all the advertisers who've been with me for close to 20 years. But again, one thing leads to another, right? So we've all got those stories. You were telling one about Jack Doles.
Yeah, right.
Right?
Just coming in for an interview, walking out with a job after you go out, hold
Jack's
the camera
done a lot
for
of
the
good
first
things.
time.
That's right. Didn't get credit for you.
No, we've all got that person we owe it all to.
Right.
Seems like you've had a lot of high decibel learning moments.
That's a great description.
Is there one that sticks out to you the most, or maybe it was a quiet learning moment that changed your career or your perception of the job?
Maybe one of each. A quiet learning moment as I learned what ultimate professionalism is. 12 years old, and a bunch of guys I grew up with, and we're all, love sports. And so there was a magazine called Sport Magazine. Before Sports Illustrated was a weekly, Sport was a monthly, but it was very popular. And they had a 3-part sports quiz, national sports quiz, and really, really difficult, obscure questions, right? So 45 questions, and we've got, I think, 39 of them we've nailed down. But that's not going to win. So someone said, why don't you just call Ernie Harwell? So, I said, okay. So I called the Tigers office and get through the switchboard. And I said, I'd like to speak with Mr. Harwell. And he said, well, he's on the West Coast. The Tigers are playing the Angels. And he said, who should we tell him is calling? And I said, well, Jack Ebling. And the receptionist says, does he know you? I said, no, but, I thought maybe he could help us. So, I told people that, I called Ernie Harwell. They said, well, that's one wasted phone call. So I'm out on the driveway just playing basketball by myself, just shooting hoops. And my mom comes running to the door. She says, Jackie, come quick. It's Mr. Harwell on the phone.
Goodness.
Come in the house. I take the phone, got the long spoolie cords, right, and the landline. So I go around the corner and I said, hello? Yes, Mr. Harwell. And so I explained, not very well, what we were doing, right? And he had just gotten back in town from the end of the road trip. And he says, son, what are you doing tomorrow afternoon? And I said, I don't know. He said, meet me at the Detroit Public Library at 2:00. So I said, can I bring my friends with me? And he said, sure. So we got there about...
Do a good Ernie.
Oh, thank you. Thanks. So we got there about 10, right? We were not going to be late. And sure enough, 2:00, on his way to the ballpark, here comes Ernie Harwell. He sits down with us. What can I do for you young fellas? And so we explained it to him. We showed him what we had done. And he wouldn't give us the answers, but he told us where we could go to get the answers, right? And so we submitted this thing. We finished third in the nation in this contest. So he said, if there's ever anything I can do for you. So now I am starting to do some things with the paper. And I'm down at Tiger Stadium. And I see him. And I said, Mr. Harwell, I can't thank you enough for really inspiring me to do this. And he said, I remember you at the library. So he gives me his home phone number. Eventually, I called, and he says, anytime you're here, I want you to come to the booth. So I would go, and I'd watch him do an inning with Paul Carey, great broadcaster. Wound up in 2006. I wrote a book called Tales of the Detroit Tigers Dugout. And I was finishing up, and I talked to him a couple times, and I called him again, and I said, Ernie, I just had a couple more things. I'm sorry to bother you. He says, I'm a little bit disappointed in you. I mean, you could have cut my leg off at that point, right?
Right.
I'd have felt better. And I said, I'm sorry, what did I do? He said, you didn't ask me to edit your book. I said, well, I'm asking you now. Would you like to take a look at the manuscript before I turn it in? He comes back. It comes back to me, and he's got like 20 people I need to call about certain things, and all this stuff. And so then I wound up over at his place, and his wife Lulu is a fantastic woman. But again, how does something like that start? Yeah. It starts with a phone call that I probably had no business making for a contest I had no business entering.
I mean, you talk about it. Some people get more breaks than others, but
yeah,
some people also take more risks.
Yeah. What I learned, Casey, from Ernie Harwell was it never hurts to be nice. And to help people who can't help you, I think that's the mark of a great person.
Yeah.
I mean, anybody can help someone when there's a quid pro quo. They got something coming back. But I had no reason to do that. I'm going to stop at the library to see some kid, right? So that's what I've tried to do. And the thing that I am proudest of with the career, going to be 75 before long, is I've had 88 people who've worked with me who've now gone into the business.
That's incredible.
So that's been something, and now I see their work, and it's like I can identify, I can relate to that, and feel like I helped a little bit. You talked about things that taught me about the business. There was one other story, and this was the opposite of the Ernie Harwell story. I'm covering a Lions-New York Giants game on Thanksgiving in 1982. And Gary Danielson throws a pass into the flat. Lawrence Taylor, is a rookie, picks it off, goes 95 yards for a touchdown. But in the second half, there was a punt. The Lions punted, and the Giants punt returner, a guy named Leon Bright, he's back. He's going to catch the ball, and he gave kind of a halfway fair catch signal. It wasn't enough that the Lions gunner, a guy named Leonard Thompson, came and just pancaked him. Just absolutely like the Roadrunner, right? And so, this guy was breathing or what? It took 10 minutes to get him off the field. So the game is over now, and the Giants win the game. And we're all outside the Lions locker room waiting to go in. And if you're covering for the Lansing State Journal, you're writing the game story, the column, the sidebar, the note, but you're doing all of that, right? The Free Press and the News have 6 people. They're all over the place. So I had to get what I needed from the Lions, but then I said, Brad Van Pelt is over in the other locker room, who's a Michigan State hero, who I had gotten to know a little bit. I'm going to get this and then dash over and get something with him. Here comes the Giants head coach, a guy named Ray Perkins, a little tough guy, played at Alabama. Comes over, and he wants to get into the locker room. He's going to fight Monty Clark, the coach of the Lions. And Monty would have crushed him like a grape, but they wouldn't let him in. So he goes back across swearing and stuff. So I go in, I get all the Lions stuff. I said, man, I got to get over the Giants. So I go back over there, and they've all left. They're all on the bus, except one guy standing against the wall, smoking a cigarette. Looks like he's going to kill the world. It's Ray Perkins, the coach. And he's just had his press conference there. It ended and didn't end well, shouting at some New York reporters. So I come up from the side, and I said, hey, Coach, sorry to bother you, but I just wonder if you can tell me about that play with the... And he turns around, and he thought I was one of the New York beat writers who he didn't get along with. And he turned around, he grabbed me by the throat, and he pushed me up against a locker. He's smaller than I was, but he lifted me about 2 inches off the ground. And then he realized I'm not the guy he thought I was, his personal tormentor. So he puts me down, and he's like brushing me off and all this stuff, He said, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do that, but, I've been dealing with this and a long time. And so, then he told me, he said, the guy's going to be okay. He's going to live. And so I go back up to the press box. Now I'm writing. I'm a little disheveled here. It's not often you get, So I'm starting to write, and I get a message. You got to go to command center where the PR directors of the team sit. I go, then there's a Giants PR guy. And he said, are you Jack Ebling? I said, yeah. He said, did you have a confrontation with Coach Perkins? I said, well, I guess. And he said, well, we just want to apologize and all these things. And he didn't mean it, and he's sorry. And I said, yeah, I know. We're fine. We're fine. 2 days later, I get a call from the New York Giants, right? I said, well, we're really sorry. I don't know if they thought I was going to sue them or make a big deal about it or what. I said, what can we do? What can we do to, make this right? I said, it's not a big deal. He said, well, here's my personal number. If there's anything we can do. So I said, you know what? This is going to be good. So every time I needed something, I kind of played that card, right? And I get Phil Simms on the phone, or I get whoever it was, Harry Carson. Didn't matter. I said, I'm the guy who had the run-in, and, I'm lucky to be alive, but, I just played it out that way. So sometimes, good or bad, you make the best of the opportunity. It's amazing what can happen.
I want to read a couple things off here for you.
Okay.
And just bear with me, because might get a little lengthy. The only 3-time National Sports Media Association State Sportscaster of the Year, Greater Lansing Sports Hall of Fame 2006, MSU Outstanding Alumni 2024, 21 major state national writing awards. You've co-authored 8 books. The Drive host, 25 years of sports and news radio that you've talked about. The longest running hour-long year-round sports show, Press Pass, every Sunday on Fox 47 since 2013. We haven't even gotten there yet. Michigan chairman for the Heisman Trophy for 36 years. You've been a board member for both the Football and Basketball Press Writers Association, and this one gets me. You have seen every MSU Michigan football and men's basketball game since October of 1969.
Yeah.
If you can only take, did I miss anything, by the way? I'm sure I did. I know I did. But if you can only take with you one feather from the cap that you've assembled over your career, which feather are you walking away with?
I'm still employed. I guess being adaptable, because we all get fired eventually if we're around long enough. Izzo says it's going to happen to him. I said, yeah, right. But eventually something happens and you change, you adjust. So 3-time sports writer and 3-time sportscaster, nobody else has had the opportunity to do that, I think. But probably the thing that I'm proudest of are the young people. I mentioned the people who I look now and I see, and some of them aren't even in broadcasting, but they've used those skills to be managers or successful in business or something. And so that makes me feel the best.
I think, my lesson just from this conversation, Jack, is listen to your wife. That's what it all comes down to, right? None of this happens.
That's right. That's absolutely right. And she would agree with you. We're getting ready to celebrate our 51st anniversary.
Congratulations.
In August. Wow. I figure I only have 5 more weeks to make it. She could still throw me out. That's possible. But when you get close to 51, you're feeling pretty good about it. So, yeah. Glad that it all worked out in one place. Most people in the business, as you know, they move around. They can be very, very successful, and their resume looks like assistant football coaches. Every 3 years they're in a different place, and sometimes that's what it takes. Mm-hmm. But I've been lucky enough to be in mid-Michigan since I showed up here as a MSU freshman in '69. Other than 3 years, I went and coached and taught in Lapeer. Other than that, Lansing stuck with me.
Real quickly, I do want to know, every MSU Michigan football and men's basketball game since October of '69?
Yeah. Every
single one?
Yeah. I mentioned that. Funny, you talk about my wife. I mentioned that to her a couple years ago. And she said, that's from the Get a Life department. But yeah, and it wasn't something I planned. I said, I'm going to go to every game for 55 years. You just start doing it and you just keep showing up. And, I think I'm lucky. My dad used to always say, kid, you ever going to get a real job? And I don't know if I have. It's been work, but it's been so much fun. I know people who make a lot of money, but it's not fun.
You still get joy out of it.
I still get joy out of it every day. Yeah.
And you filled a lot of buckets. Anything left on the bucket list that you want to still check?
I've covered just about every event you could cover. I haven't covered the Masters golf tournament. That's one. But Super Bowls, national championships, Stanley Cup playoffs, World Cup. I've had a chance to do all those kinds of things. I guess Tom Izzo's last game. Known him for 44 years now. So it'll be 44. This is the 44th season. 32 as head coach and 12 as Judd Heathcote's gopher before that. But that'll be something very different. But when you're around long enough, the numbers just start to accrue, right? So Pat Fitzgerald is the 15th head football coach that I've dealt with. Only 3 basketball coaches, but that's because Izzo and Judd, they got more than a half century between the two of them. But a lot of turnover, never a dull moment. And this is just the size community, Casey, that it's big enough, but it's not too big.
Yeah.
There's enough here that's interesting. You got a major university. You got another one just down the road. You got 4 pro teams a little more than an hour away. You got a great high school scene, great people. But I think there's a sense of community. So people are in the fight together, and they're into helping each other, not just helping themselves. So
it's a quid pro quo-less community.
Yeah, exactly.
The lesson from Ernie.
That's right.
Well, Jack, let's give you the mic here for one final thought. What if there's something you want to share, whether it's what you hope that the community thinks of you and your work, or something entirely different, the mic is yours.
Well, thanks for having me, first of all, over here. I appreciate Annie getting in touch with me, and now I know where I can park downtown. MAB building, it's a great place. I would just tell people that if they can work together, and I think this is true for a winning team, it's true for a winning community, and it might even be true for this country, if we could ever get there. We is always better than me. And if we can pull together in one direction, it's amazing what we can accomplish.
He's Jack Ebling. I'm Casey Jones, and this is In Media.